Hi, everyone. I wanted to thank you all for coming to today's webinar. Just a couple of seconds here and we'll get started. Okay, looks like it's time. I didn't want to cut anyone off who was getting here right on time. My name is Julia Wester. I'm the co-CEO and co-founder of 55 Degrees. And some of you are new customers. Some of you have been customers since we started working with Agile Analytics. And yeah, we have a lot of different happy customers. For those of you who have been on this journey with us for quite some time, you'll know that we acquired Actionable Agile Analytics a few years ago. And since then, we've been doing a lot of work inside the application, starting by focusing on rewriting all of the data loading processes. And that's in Jira, that's in Azure, that's in our standalone version of our product. And since then, we've been doing lots and lots of things to turn that app into our very own app, something that we create and we are driving towards a future outcome. And I'm really happy to say that this week, yesterday, or even Sunday for all of you cloud customers, and tomorrow for all of you on-prem customers, you're going to be experiencing this release that's entirely our own. So we're really excited to get to this point. There's been a lot of change, and I want to thank all of our cloud customers for helping us through all that change. Change never goes away, though, and this is sort of just a beginning. All of the stuff that we've done in the app, we're really proud of, but we look at it as a nice, clean launching point to keep adding awesome features, whether those are charts and insights, or whether there's features that make it easier to upload your data and use the existing charts and insights. Even though we have done a refresh of the layout that I'll go over shortly, we want to keep improving it, making it better, making it more intuitive for the users. So this is essentially a relaunch of the Actionable Agile Analytics application and product as a whole. So I want to thank you for coming, and I'm just going to dive in. I know some of you have probably seen the blog post that outlines a lot of things that have changed, but we're going to walk through those in the application and even some more things that didn't quite fit into the post. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. So whether you are on our SaaS or standalone product, as we like to call it, at analytics.actionableagile.com, which you can usually tell because you've got this blue header and blue footer. It's a little bit different looking. Whether you're in that version, you're in our Azure version, which also has, it's embedded into Azure DevOps Services. It has a slightly different header and look and feel, or whether you're in our Jira product, cloud or data center, the changes that I'm going to go over today are going to be pretty consistent, and are exactly the same, really. And if there's anything that does differ, I'm going to point that out as we go through. Okay, so here it is. This is the brand new face of Actionable Agile. At this point now, we are loading you into the dashboard when you come into a data set. And that is unless in our standalone product, you have an opportunity to choose a default chart. So if I want to land on, say, the scatter plot like I used to for a data set when I load in, or any other chart that I want to go to specifically outside of the dashboard chart, I can set that as my default chart. And then when I open a data set, I'll go right to that. That's something that we are looking at bringing towards our embedded apps, but right now that's possible in our standalone apps version. But for all the rest of us, we land here. And this is what I would call the first release of a brand new place to get insights about the data set that you just loaded. Now, I know one thing that people always ask is, when are we going to be able to date limit this particular data set? We may not add the date scrubber at the bottom because those are sort of linked to specific charts or specific metrics. What we are planning on doing is adding a global chart control that will let you select a specific part of a time period of your data that can then apply to all charts without you having to go into each individual chart to set that in that date control at the bottom. So that's something that is coming, is on our roadmap. By the way, you can reach our roadmap for cloud users. You can come to the help icon in the bottom right, and you'll see product documentation, our support portal. With this new release, we've got a page for known issues, so you can go check that out. But we also have a community and a roadmap, and these are both interactive places to go. So you'll see that new date control in progress on our roadmap. So look forward to that coming pretty soon. So what we've done here is we've added a bit more in the how many and the cycle time areas of this dashboard. Instead of just defaulting to 85%, we wanted to give you all of those 4 standard percentiles that we use and give you that information right at a glance. On the bottom, we also we had a stability dashboard or gadget on the dashboard. And you know what? That was super difficult for people to understand what it was actually trying to tell you. And after so long of trying to fight with that and argue with it and, get people to understand that, hey, this is information for all of your data up to 7 days ago or 30 days ago or today or whatever, we decided to look and see, okay, if you're thinking about stability, and for those of you who understand Little's Law and the assumptions that you have to be taking into account if you are looking at trying to make a stable system, like starting and finishing work at about the same rate, not letting your work items age unnecessarily, things like that. When we thought about what stability really means, we decided to put that in to the dashboard. So we've got 2 brand new charts, a pace, start and finish. So basically, each dot, you can see that we have a blue line for started and a purple line for completed. And I can click on one of these and I can see in April, we started 105 items and completed 93. And sort of like on the cumulative flow diagram where you can see the arrival and departure rates, we just want to look at how these are in relation to each other. Which line is above, how far is it above? It tells us a bit more. Are we keeping pace with what we are seeing coming in? Are we finishing what we're coming in? Sorry, I got a bit distracted because I saw that people are, someone is saying that it shows me that it hasn't started yet. Is everyone able to see my screen? Someone can send me a chat and let me know if you're able to see my screen. Okay, cool, great. Then I'm just gonna let people go forward. Okay, now on the whip and whip age gadget, we have sort of a synchronized chart. So you can see here that I've got 3 different pieces of information that I'm showing you. And we are showing it, one of the known issues is that it's just saying May and not the date. So May something 2024. And so what we're able to see is 3 different things. How many work items were in progress on that point in time? What the average age of those work items are, and what the total age of the work items are. So that's really cool because when we think of age, we know that when the item finishes and it stops aging, that becomes cycle time. Cycle time is what we use to do forecasting for individual items. And we know that the more items we have in progress with the same amount of resources, that they often age more because we're switching back and forth between things. So what this really is a way to let you see how the amount of work we have in progress at a given time? How is the age of all those items together? And how is the average age of all of those trending over time? Okay, so when we think about age, this total age, it's one thing that I put in the top here. Are you managing these to improve cycle time and reduce risk? Because what we want to help people start realizing is that age is an expression of risk. If you think about this is all the time we've put into work that's not yet finished. How can we control our age? And that goes back to keeping stable systems. Are we making sure we're not letting things age unnecessarily? So these are what we currently have on the dashboard. Our plan is to make this even more responsive, give you more options to control the visual aspect of this page, but then also start, one of my goals and dreams for this page is to start adding more insights that we can pull from the data that we already have and add them to this page. It is scrollable now. And as we add more things, you'll be able to scroll. And my hope is that we'll also add some customization so you can decide which things you want to see on the page. So that's the dashboard. Those are a bit of my hopes and dreams for where that dashboard is going. Let me see if I have any questions on this dashboard. Okay, we have, how can I find the list of started and completed items? I see something strange in start and finish, would like to investigate. We do not yet have that linked from this chart, although that's what we want. But you are able to go and look and see in a few different places what's finished in a period of time. You can see what's finished in a period of time from the cycle time scatter plot, from the throughput run charts, and from your source data chart. And we'll go to that source data chart just in a moment. We do have a known issue with this last little dot here on the started line. Okay. The information on age, is it cumulative age of all the WIP? Yes. So if I go to this point in time, and on this day in June, which we need to get the date in there, we got that pointed to today. Yes, thank you. I do need to write that as total age. You guys are right there. We're gonna call age to total age because that is a more accurate representation. So 35 items, all the ages of all those 35 items added together is 238. So we'll update that to total age, and then that will just be even more intuitive. Okay. One thing I wanted to let you know is that in the past, you had to go through ridiculous, series of steps to close and open the sidebar, which is crazy in this day and age. So obviously now we've got a collapsible sidebar that's easy, helps you make more room for your charts. We may continue to improve the sleekness and look and feel of this in the future. Again, in the bottom, you have your help center where you are coming through and looking if you have issues, you want to come interact and learn. And this is in our cloud products. For those of you in Jira Data Center, then you're still going to have your question mark in the top banner, the top app banner. And the reason is because we're using a cloud service that lets us not have to use developers to update information, add latest news. And we know our on-prem customers don't like that. So we're still doing things the more traditional way there. So you won't, if you're in data center, you won't have, when this gets released and it gets installed in your instance, you won't have this, you'll have the question mark still up here. So our product managers, which is often me, when we make a release, will come and add a news item to the latest news. And this is how, you had a pop-up here for when we released this webinar, and we added this here as well, an item where you could see the latest webinar to sign up for. So when we have events, we will often add them here as well. Okay. We have a question about the workflow stages, and that's great because that's the next thing I wanted to get to. You guys are all helping me stay on track. Okay, so in the past, if you were a brand new user, you came into Actionable Agile and it was not intuitive exactly what was happening when you were checking off these different workflow stages. There were colors attached, but the only place that those colors actually appeared were in the cumulative flow diagram. And that it there was no real value add for this workflow stage to be a legend for that chart all across the board. We could use this space to give we could use this space to give people a little visual indication of what's actually happening when you check and uncheck stages. So as you're checking and unchecking these stages, you're letting the charts know how to measure, right? And it's always been, for instance, if I'm looking at cycle time, it's always been how long does it take from when it enters the first check stage to when it enters the last check stage. And so when we looked at how to make a visual representation of that, well, the beginning with the first check stage, that marks our in progresses until we get to the last check stage, which is the first done stage. So what happens here is that anything not checked above the first check stage is considered not started. So we have a question, is it recommended by default to leave the backlog column disabled? And I'm going to throw that back on you. What are you trying to measure? For instance, if you check the backlog stage, then all of your analytics and Actionable Agile that relate to time are going to start looking at the time from when something enters the backlog stage to when it enters the done stage. And by default, we are leaving the first item unchecked because generally you will want to measure, leave off and a not started stage because most of the times people aren't by default trying to measure that not started stage. So if you came here and you had multiple not started stages, that's fine. You just uncheck more until you get to the place where you want to start measuring. And let's say done, what you want to measure is done. Isn't the very last stage of something before that. So I just start unchecking from the bottom. And now I'm getting a better visual indication of how the app is processing the information I'm giving it. Based on what I've checked, now it's treating for analytics purposes these first three stages as not started. And then the first two checked as in progress, and then these last as finished. And so if I do this in the global workflow controls up here under all charts, then this is going to carry on to all charts. So as I go through to aging, that has been carried over. As I go to flow efficiency, which I'm seeing someone asking about, which we'll come back to this in a second and talk a bit more. That's going to carry through, so you don't have to redo that in every one. Now, I don't know how many people have actually paid attention to the chart-specific workflow stages control. So just like a chart-specific item filter, it's now filtered down to seeing what globally we set. So we said globally, this is the part of the workflow we're looking at, but I can, in this chart only just use this to affect what I'm seeing in this chart without having it carry over to other stages. Okay. Just so you know, the workflow stages is the biggest thing to understand about using Actionable Agile because it is defining what you're measuring. So if you don't get that the way you want, you're going to misunderstand what it's trying to tell you. Okay, so we have, let me uncheck one of these workflow stages here, and then I want to show you the item filter. So this is not specifically very different. We are going to be working on, and we even did some user testing with some concepts for building a filter that has exclude features. I see people asking about that as well. So there are things that we will continue doing, but right now we have updated this, and you can now see the filters for all charts and the chart you're on in the same place. So before, I would have to come up here to filter for all charts and then come down here to filter just for this chart. But you can see it's really just pulling up the same dialog, but changing which tab we're on. So I can select user stories and only get user stories for all my charts. And then I can go into this chart, which is the cycle time scatter plot, and just then filter down even farther, but only on this chart. Okay. You can also see that now it's easier to clear all of your settings. So I can clear, you've always been able to clear in this dialog for if you're on this chart or if you're on the global charts, but you have the clears here. So I could clear the all charts. Clear the ones for this chart. I can also hit this button to clear all. It'll say, hey, if you proceed, you're clearing everything, filters for all of your individual charts, global and everything. So it's just checking with you. There's another place now where we've tightened this up a little bit and we've added some clear functionality here. So now you're able to see all the filters that you have set, but including your stages that you have overridden. So you're able to clear all of that on a specific level. Either I just clicked the little circle reset button to reset the global filters, but I left my cycle time scatter plot filters. But I could also clear all. So essentially, this filter here comes up when you filter data or when you disable workflow stages. And from here, you can clear all of that at once. If you don't want to clear your workflow stages and you just want to clear your data filters, you can do that here. Okay. Trend lines. One thing that I even forget at times, you're used to coming here and turning the trend line on or off. We're moving towards getting more and more things in the chart area. And so this legend actually has the ability to turn off and on your trend. But you can also, we had some people say, can we just see the trend? So I can turn off the dots as well. So consider this like a functional legend. Not only does it tell you what you're looking at, but you're able to see just the things that you want to see. Okay. One thing that we have done is we have changed the way that we're highlighting blocked items. And we have learned from doing this that it meets some people's scenarios, but not every use case that you would like. So we are going to keep this as an option where it sort of dims all the background noise so you can really focus on the things that are blocked. We didn't really like using red as a reserved color because also people might use red as a dot color. So we didn't love, and color blindness and whatnot, we didn't really love using a color to highlight blocked. So what we've done is we've made it by default dim everything out. But we've heard user feedback. And so we're going to give you another option here, at least one more option. And I think that's going to be to change the shape of so instead of a dot, it turns to a different shape for blocked items and maybe even more options. And that would take effect for not only this blocked item treatment on the scatter plot, but also how we highlight stalled items. Because what happens here is on the aging chart, we are going to eventually add here to be able to include blocked time as stalled time so that the highlighting blocked will happen here as well. But you're able to say, okay, if an item hasn't moved in X days, we're going to consider that stalled. And I want to highlight those to see what happens. Well, in the past, if there were 5 items in one dot or multiple items in one dot, and you highlighted something stalled, and let's say one of these was stalled, it would show the whole dot as stalled. What we've done here is that when you don't have highlight stalled checked, you see that there are 3 items with the same age in the same column. But if I check highlight stalled, I see only 2 of them are stalled. 1 of them is not stalled. Okay, so we've actually separated those so that you can more clearly see exactly what is stalled. Okay. So I just wanted to cover that. Mostly everything else about this chart is the same, although we've moved the aging replay up here so that you can see that you can go back in time either with that or go back in time. The place that the workflow stage information is going to make most sense is when you're on today. Just so you know, when you go back to a previous date, it's still giving you current information about the age and whatnot, the breakdown of all of that. So you can see where the placement of items were on previous days, but you're not seeing past information at the detail level. So just be aware that if you go back in the past, you might see some interesting data here. Because you'll even see the cycle time of when it's finished. But if I'm looking at that item in the past, it might have only been in dev done. So something we're thinking about to see if there's anything that we want to do around that. But I wanted to point that out because we had a user question about that. Okay, let's see. I want to highlight one more new thing that we have with our chart, the new chart library that we're using, is that if you have a noisy data set, you don't only have to use the date layout to dial in and see specific data more clearly. Now you can select just a portion of the chart and zoom in. And you'll know you're zoomed in if you see this reset zoom button up here. And to get out of that, you just press that button. So it's a little bit different than doing this, right? Because then I still can't see all the detail as easily. And honestly, on this chart only changes the percentile lines. It doesn't change what you see on the chart or make that easier to see. So if I wanted to dial in, I would do that. Also, you can see here that sometimes certain features aren't available when you're zoomed in. You can see here that when I click on these, I'm not getting this sort of what we call a waterfall diagram that I do see when I click on these items, where we see how long they spent in each stage. So that's not a bug. It's just hard to do in Zoom. So we just say there's no confusion. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about cycle time scatter plot, about the differences in aging, work in progress. Let me go back to the scatter plot so I can talk about our friend, the date control. And so you find the date control right now in the chart control layout section, and you can toggle this puppy on or off. And in the past, it was so painful to watch our customers, if we were in meetings, trying to select like a specific day and find that. You could see in the old one, as you moved the control window, it would tell you which date it was on. And it was so painful to try to find a specific date and get a specific date range. And we didn't like that our customers were having that pain. So now what we want to do is we wanted to give people a couple of options. You can still do it that traditional way, but now you can come in and pick which date you want this data set to start from. And by default, it's from the first piece of data, the date from the first data in the data set that you have. But I could come in here and select from this date. So if I wanted from April the 1st to June the 1st, I can do that there. Also, if you have a y-axis ability to change it, you are going to either be able to do it with the draggable window or with the selected values area. So basically, you'll see at least selected dates, but if the y-axis is editable in a specific date control, then you'll be able to use the dragger or the values to change that. And again, just like before, you are able to move that window and sort of watch things change. Okay, so we talked about trend lines and how we've moved where they are. We've talked about blocked stage, and stale work and how that's treated. We talked about Zoom, the date selector. So now I want to move to a couple of other charts where we've made some other visual changes. Okay. So one of the first ones is the flow efficiency. So before, there was a lot of information and a lot of things that you needed to do that are hidden in the chart controls, calculation inputs, queuing stages, and whatnot. And we've taken what I would say the first step into bringing that and putting it in your face and letting you know that, hey, maybe this 94.6% is not really your flow efficiency because there are some things you haven't done yet, like you haven't set queuing stages. So going back to someone had a question when we were talking about workflow stages and how that correlates to queuing stages on this chart. It's going to pull from the options that you've made available. So if I add more stages here, it's going to add more stages for me to select as queuing. So if I included my backlog, then I could, and for those of you, I made an assumption that everyone knows what this chart is. Let me just give you a quick overview. Flow efficiency is basically the ratio of working time versus, as opposed to waiting time. So right now, it's saying this chart is trying to tell me with the information I've given it that 99.6% of the time that we spend with work in one of these stages is active time. And we know that's not true, right? So there's some configurations that are missing. I am telling it to count blocked time as queuing time, right? If I didn't, then I didn't give it any queuing information, so it has nothing to do. Everything looks active, so it's 100%. So we checked the block days, so we let it know that that time shouldn't be counted as active time. But then in our workflows, if you have a workflow set up so that something happens and then it goes to a place and waits for it, and then it gets pulled out of that when it's ready and into a more active workflow state or status, and so on. If you have a discernible difference in your workflow between waiting and working, then you're able to use this flow efficiency chart to help you see the difference in the time spent in those two types of columns. So the way that you would do that then is I would then check all the stages that represent wait. Right? And I would do it here. And now when I'm including the backlog, because things sit in the backlog very long, this goes again to a question about should we check the backlog, right? Well, that depends. Do I want to know how much time working versus waiting, including the backlog? If so, then 3.8%, because the percentage of time of its life that a card spends in the backlog is pretty high. But what if I unchecked my backlog? Then it shoots up because now I'm only looking at the ratio of time between the in progress and the in progress states, right? So 40.6%, which is probably still optimistic, but we're working with just block time and queuing workflow statuses as signals. So what you're knowing is that this is the ceiling. It's probably not exactly what your flow efficiency is, but this is the ceiling. And the way people use this is basically see, am I spending more time working or waiting? Well, 40% of our time is spent in active stages. 60% of our time is spent in waiting stages. And so the sort of decision you can make with that, because this is actionable agile, is to maybe it might be worth to spend more time on reducing wait than speeding up the in-progress work. That's the kind of information that you get from this chart, and those are the kinds of decisions that you can make. And there's lots more we could talk about this chart, but that's not what this webinar is about. So we're going to keep moving on. Okay. And next, we are going to go to the Monte Carlos. And so these have probably the most difference that we can see. How many items can we complete? That's what we're answering on this chart. And the problem is that when we put people direct, if you were a brand new user to Actionable Agile and you got thrown into this Monte Carlo how many chart, there was just a bunch of chart stuff on there, and it was overwhelming and scary and confusing. So we want, this is probably the place where you can see what we're trying to do as we go through in the future. We want to make it clear to users when they come through to a chart, they know what it's trying to tell you, what you're trying to answer, and it's trying to give you information about how it got there. So Monte Carlo win is a question about how many items can we complete, and it's talking about a specific time period. Now, right now, we still do have the simulation controls over here. We're likely just going to integrate them to, so that you can just edit these dates directly and not have to come over here where it's sort of hidden away. So you can change this date range to be the time period that you want. Also, we got rid of one of the places where we show sort of like the data used for the simulation, because we had just the throughput run chart, right? And that was the data that you're using. And then we had another copy of it exactly. And that is where you selected which portion of the data that you wanted to use. And so we combine that and like, look, this is like a working legend. This is not only your throughput, but this is the same place where you can come and select a different portion of it to use for the forecast. So I have that here. So this is, and we marked it, data used for the simulation. You refine by selecting a portion of the data below. And just like the other scrubber, it's the same kind of thing, or the other date control. You can either set the dates here or with this movable window. Now, the area at the top, we decided to focus on the results and not make those secondary, because that's what you're coming here to see. And in both versions of the Monte Carlo charts, there's two ways to see your results. And one is always a histogram. Okay. And so some people would prefer to come and see this histogram. And it tells you basically, people are asking about trials. So one thing, and I'll use that to talk about this histogram. When we first run the simulation, we use 10,000 trials. And what that means is like, you're trying to simulate how long it will take for you to get work done for a period of time. So we're running 10 trials of you getting that work done. And so we have to capture the result of each trial. And so these numbers down here are how many things you finished, and the height is how many trials had that outcome. And so we can put all that together in a histogram, and we can start looking at the probabilities of how many items you can finish in a given period of time. If you stacked all these charts up, it would be 10,000 tall, right? Add trials lets you have even more than 10,000 trials. If you click it right now, it goes all the way to 1 million. We did get people in the previous version, you could stop it. And we have gotten feedback that people like to have more than 10,000, but don't always want to go all the way to 1 million. So we do have that on our short list to improve and give you an ability to say exactly how many you want. So that is coming. We have heard your feedback. I'm not exactly sure, a date that it's going to be released. Yes, we do forecasting, but we have to have an idea of when we might start it to know how, or when we're going to prioritize it to be able to give you an end date. The start's always important for forecasting an end. Okay, so here as well, a big change is that we've gotten rid of essentially the calendar view on this page, because really what this simulation was always answering was the number that should show up on that last day that you picked, right? So we are just putting that right in your face. And before, you had to pick which percentile you wanted to look at. Now, what I think the app had tried to do in the past, this was part of what we had acquired, is it was trying to give you an idea of the rate at which you'd finish items on the way to the end, but the simulation never actually simulated the outcomes on those previous days. It was only the very end day. And what it did for all to fill in all the days between the first and the last day that you put in as your time frame, it sort of just averaged it or peanut buttered it out. And we as a community know we don't like that average word very often, right? Only in the situations where it makes a lot of sense. So we just took that out and decided to focus on what it was actually telling you. Okay. So that's that. And also, if you don't want to see the histogram, of course, that's, a lot of empty space. But if you don't want to see the histogram, you don't have to. If you don't want to see that and you only want to see the histogram, you can. So this is an example of a treatment that we're looking at moving to for toggling on and off different layout options. Instead of having to come here and open a thing and click on the whatnot, we want to have that more in the chart area so you can get an idea of how we're moving. Now, the Monte Carlo when is a very similar type of chart, right? But here again, we have the question that we're answering. We have the same toggles. We have the same information about the defaults that the controls use, because if you come in here, you get an answer already, but you haven't really given it the question. So we have defaults, and those defaults are now here right in your face. So simulation results for finishing 100 items. How long would it take you from today is the default. We could put that up there as well. But from today, how long would it take you to finish 100 items given this rate of throughput down here? Again, I can select only a portion of that if I know that there's a reason to do that, and it will update the histogram. The histogram works the same way, but for the other way, the way to interpret the answers the histogram gives you, a calendar in this case makes a lot of sense because we are talking about dates as the answer. So what you're able to do is you're able to look here and see, based on the color bands, you can jump to sort of the probability range or the certainty range that you are comfortable with. So you want to be like above 85, right? So I can come here and I can know that I need to start looking at August the 7th or later. But you can still go to any particular date and look at the chances of finishing the amount of work you put in by that date. You can still, alter that. You can still give it a range for the number of items. And you can still come in and giving it a range is sort of like scenario planning. The use case for this primarily, I think the intention for this is for you to come in and say, this is the known work that we need to get done. When will it get done, right? And so that's what I would call your actual forecast. There's 20 items in my backlog. When will they get done? Or whatever container that you're looking at. A way to sort of plan for possible scenarios and think about maybe risk is to say, hey, I might have more work coming in. So how long would it take if I had 20 to 30 items, right? So now I'm starting to introduce variation. So that's more scenario planning, getting away from my actual forecast. But another way to think about risk can not only create more work for us, but it can also reduce our capability to deliver at the same rate. So instead of looking at this forecast with our actual throughput, we could say, well, what if I'm 80% of my throughput? How does that change? So playing with these two fields lets you have a way to plan scenarios. To go back to your actual forecast, you come back to the known. Okay, so all of those things are still possible here. Okay. I am looking at some of the questions. It would be important for the forecast to only start the simulation from an action to run the simulation. Okay. I would like maybe Eloise if Eloise is my colleague and she's the one that you often deal with in support. I'm going to have her follow up with you all to figure out which issue that you're having and if you're having any performance issues. And we will definitely get that taken care of. Okay. So someone asked about setting a past date in the when or how many, and you can do that in the when. I think we were told about an issue, in the how many of not being able to do that. So that's on our known issues list. So if you come here, at least for the one that it was reported in, if you come here and click, you should see that. If you don't see a problem in this known issues list, reach out to support, because we may not know about it. Could be we just haven't gotten that page updated yet. I sort of have two minds about this. Here's why I think you shouldn't start from the past, even though we are allowing you to, at least on that one, and we'll add it back for you to be able to do that in the past on this chart as well. But we are constantly getting your new throughput, right? And so if you want to go back and look at, a forecast that you started a week ago, you did a week ago from that date until, say, a week in the future. Well, at that date, we only had this information. And I was saying, hey, I want to know how long it's going to take or how many items we can get done from that date to a future date. Okay. And that gave me information that was valid at that time. But now I'm coming in today, right? And I have new information. And so generally, I don't need to go back and reforecast the time period that's already happened. I've got information about sort of where we are today, how much work we have left based on today's actual state. And so ideally, I want to look from today and use all of this new data, because if I think what I'm trying to say is that it's like asking your GPS, say I'm an hour into a 2-hour drive. I don't go back and ask my GPS an hour in to tell me the total time from an hour ago with the new information that we have. So I always want to look at what's left, right? If I did go back and pick a date in the past, then it's going to not only forecast, the time I have left in the state range, but it's going to reforecast the past with maybe new information that wasn't available then, and maybe actually be not as accurate. So it's a bit better to, in fact, we probably should just make it today. But we're making it more flexible, and we're just putting this in your hands for you to understand sort of the caveats of doing that. So just know that if I go reforecast from the past, but I use new information, it's reforecasting the past, but I can't go change the past. So I might get a rosier or a worse picture than reality. Forecasting from today with updated information and knowing how much you have left is always better. And that's for both Monte Carlos. Okay. Source data. This is one of the first things that we fixed or released. It's not really a chart, even though it's in the chart dropdown, but sort of data. Have you ever heard data's meaningless without its context? Well, charts are sort of hard to know the meaning of if you don't know the data that's going into them. So this is the place where you come and see all the data that we pulled out of Azure or Jira or whatever, or the data that you uploaded. You can see, did we pull that in the way you expected? And there are multiple ways that you can view your data. By default, it loads what's called the basic view. To explain that, I'm going to go to what we call the raw here for a second. This is what we pulled out of your source data, whether that's from Jira, Azure, or a wizard, or a file you uploaded. This should be, if we pulled from a system like Jira or Azure, we're calculating some of these dates, but otherwise it's garbage in, garbage out, right? And you can always come here and see the unfiltered view. So even if I uncheck stages or filter out items. None of that filtering is happening here. So sometimes if you come to support and you have a problem, we'll ask you for this export of this file, which you can do here, and you can get the raw source format, the unfiltered view. Now, Basic is like that, but with all my filters applied. You see it only has my active columns. I'm only seeing user stories here because that's what I had filtered down. So I'm going to clear all that now, and I can see that Basic shows, right? So before, it was just like a printed table. It had no sorting. It had no anything. It was very difficult to find what you were looking for, but also the header wasn't sticky. So as you scroll down, you sort of had to remember which column you're in. And the same thing as when, if you need to scroll left to right, you would have to remember which item you're on. So simple things, right? So we're just trying to make things a little easier there. And there's always a lot more we can do. And that's why you should come over to our roadmap. Okay, and our roadmap is available to everyone. You can get to it even outside of the app, but we wanted to make it easier for you to find. So you can see here things that are under consideration. These are things that people have asked for. We haven't yet committed to them. Some of these we know we will commit to, but we don't want to commit to too much too soon because that's what, then you have to make excuses when priorities change. So here are more of the things that are short-term coming up. Here are some things that are in progress. This chart refresh, when we get data center and the on-prem out, we'll move that over to released. And you can see things that we've released recently. And when you come in here, you can see that product managers like myself can add comments and updates to different cards. So you are able to sort of subscribe to this. So if you want to give us feedback on a feature, especially ones that are sort of coming up or under consideration, you really want us to do that, you can come here and you can say, hey, how important is this to you? You can say, this is really important to me because sometimes we need to exclude data points, right? And then I can enter my email and I can hit submit. And I'm going to have to go confirm my email, but now you'll be subscribed to updates on that card. And as things move from coming up to in progress to released, or if I add updates to let you know how a certain thing is going, then I'm trying to see if I can find one where I sort of did that. Yeah, so you can see on this one, I've added multiple updates to keep you in the loop on what's going on. So you can do that. Now, another thing is, let's say you come here, you've got something you really want us to do. And I mean, we don't have every tiny little thing we've ever thought of, but the larger things we are trying to start putting here. But let's say you don't see it. You can come here and you can submit your idea. You can be as specific as you'd like. Just make sure we understand what you're trying to achieve. In case the way you want us to do it isn't possible, we might still find another way. So make sure you let us know what you want the outcome to be. But also, if you have a way you think it should be delivered, you can let us know that too. But then let us know how important it is to you. And then that will come in and we will look at it. And if we think that that's something that makes sense, we'll put it up here under consideration so that other people can vote on it. And we'll be able to see, how much interest we have in different things and how many people are impacted by it and how. It sort of gives us a weighted score. So I wanted to let people know about that. Okay. We just have a few minutes left, so I know there's a lot of questions. If we don't get to everything, we will definitely try to answer them directly to you or in a blog post or whatever way you want to be contacted. If you have a critical question, though, and we haven't answered it, please come to the help menu, click on the support portal, log in and enter a bug request for us or a question. You can contact us via email at support@55degrees.se. But it's always nice when you can come into the support portal, manage your cases from there, see the status of them and all of that. The other thing is that we have a user community that we are trying to sort of launch here. It's quite new. But you can see we've added this event here. So we've got a live event. We've got quite a number of members. You can see who's online now. You can come and introduce yourself. We make some announcements. Mostly what people are here to talk about is flow metrics and forecasting stuff. We decided against having like an Actionable Agile channel and a portfolio forecaster channel because a lot of times those topics overlap. So we're starting with a few spaces and then we can break that apart as we needed. We have a free introduction to Actionable Agile Analytics course that people that come into your company can take at any time. And then we also have some classes if you're interested in actually purchasing some training from other consultants. I think most of these are from Daniel Vicanti or Pratik Singh right now. You're able to do that. But yes, you can do that from here. So the link to the community is always going to be in your help menu for cloud customers. It's going to be in this menu at the bottom right. For on-premise customers, it'll be in your question mark menu. And also it's community.55degrees.se. So everything is, we're trying to make it something.55degrees.se. We are really, really excited about the direction that we're moving in Actionable Agile Analytics. Again, you can see here the different areas that we're in, Jira, Azure, and standalone. And we're really excited, but this is just the first step. We know that there's thousands of ways that we can make it easier for you to get value out of this app. Whether it's tweaking the UI, adding a control, or adding completely new insights. And we have a lot of great ideas, but we'd really love to validate them with you. So please, please interact with us in whichever way is most comfortable, in support, in our community, in our roadmap. Those are all great ways for us to start building a community. The thing that we are really excited about the community is it's not so much that we have just another place where we can talk to you, all of you know a lot of stuff, and you're all using Actionable Agile or thinking about it. You're thinking about flow metrics, process improvement, forecasting. And so it's just one more place where you can talk to each other and get better answers. So that's the kind of community we want to build, where you're talking to each other. We're not just shouting out to the void. So I hope that you will visit us there. We will be posting additional events. We are going to be having a product webinar once a month. And then we'll have specialty webinars about, if there's special releases, sort of like this one, we will be scheduling those. And then we're also going to be scheduling some content-based webinars where it's not so much about the product, but about the stuff we're trying to achieve with products and whatnot like that. So thank you very, very, very much for your time. I hope that you continue to love Actionable Agile Analytics, and let us know how we can help you make it even more valuable so that you can meet your goals and be successful. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.